Welcome. Day 7. Here we go. Hello? Hello? Samuel, 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 Samuel. These are the words heard by a kid, no older than 10, one night in the temple. After each time, little Samuel ran to Eli the priest, assuming he had called him, and each time Eli would tell him that he had not called, and he should go back to bed. 3 times Samuel heard this voice, and 2 times Eli sent him back to sleep. For the 3rd time, Eli realized that Samuel was being called by God. So when he sent Samuel back to his room the 3rd time, he told him that if he heard the voice again, to answer by saying, "Here I am, Lord, your servant is listening." Then God calls the 4th time, and Samuel answers in this way. Samuel grew to be one of the biggest prophets of the Old Testament. He was used powerfully by God, because when God called, he answered and did as he was instructed. God wants to use us in the same way. He is just waiting for us to pick up the spiritual phone and say, "Here I am, Lord. I am listening." Wouldn't it be awesome if once you became a Christian, a spiritual phone showed up on your counter and would ring any time wanted to give instructions to you? Even though there's not an actual phone for this purpose, God still talks to his children the same way now as he did back then. We only need to be open to hearing and leaving the phone on its base so that all calls can come through. For those of you born in my generation who don't know what I'm talking about, let me explain. Back before cordless phones that could be carried around in our pockets, there was 1, maybe 2 phones per household, and they were attached to a big base by a cord. When the phone rang, you would take it off its receiver and talk into the mouthpiece. Then once you were finished with the conversation, you would put the phone back on its receiver and it would hang up the call. If there were times when you did not want to be disturbed by calls, you would take the phone off the base and put it to the side. God wants our phones to always be on the base, so that whenever he calls, we can listen. You may be thinking, "I never hear from God. My phone must not be working." You don't always need to hear God to know that he has spoken. Picture a text message. No audible words were exchanged, yet the message still gets across. Sometimes this is how God speaks. A passing piece of paper, or an advertisement for something might compel us to do something. These things are tactics used by God to direct us either away from something or closer to something. These little nudges in your spirit are how God talks to us. What if I've been called somewhere, but don't know specifically what to do in that calling? In times like these, I must realize that my dreams and desires, for the most part, have been placed inside of me by the Father. With that being said, he will guide me down the path where I will be able to use my gifts and talents, also given by God, to accomplish my dreams and desires. I know that in some aspect, I have been called into the media industry. I love being on stage as much as I like being in the background. Right now, I don't know the specifics of my calling, but I know it will have something to do with both of these desires inside of me. Nothing in me is accidental, and everything in me was placed there by a Father who only wants the best for me, as well as all of you listening to these daily devotionals. Until God guides me to my path, I must choose to learn all I can about the things that interest me, so that when the phone call comes in, I will be ready to go. This is what God wants all of us to do as well. Whether you know God's plan for you in its entirety, or only know pieces, don't waste time trying to figure out your calling, for in God's perfect timing, he will reveal it to you. Just be sure that your phone is always on the base, so that God can pick up his end of the line and dial in your number. It is alright if you don't know all the details of God's plan. Just simply trust him, by knowing that when you need the answer, he will provide it in full color, so to speak. When the time comes, there will be no interference between you and God, and you will hear him somehow crystal clear. So get ready, plug in your phone, and be prepared to answer when the time comes. And I will see you tomorrow.